Saturday.
Welcome to another episode of You Left Shit Out. Let me see what's happening with the video here. This is a very important video, so I am going to start it again and let it play. But there's obviously some sort of glitch here. But we do want to start the right way with this video because, like I said, it's a very important video. So let's try this again. Oh, you know what? My daughters are home gaming. Let's we may skip it then. If it's this hard, maybe we'll skip it. But we'll give it a go, and if it doesn't work, we will skip it. All right, so let's make this bigger. All right, so now let's try this again. If it doesn't work, it's not a big deal. I played it before, but it is an important message, so let's try it again. No. All right, so we'll call it a no-go for now. So I'll just pause this video in the background. I'll give it a second. But it was weird. Maybe I watched it too many times because before we get started, I do watch these videos just to test them. And sometimes I do watch them over and over. I don't know, something may have happened. But anyway, welcome to a brand new episode of You Left Shit Out. I'm your host, Compton J. I wanted to come to you and bring. This is not a brand new story, and I'm gonna reboot that to see if it works. So that's why that's still up in the background. But I wanted to bring this story, an article from the World Socialist website. It's a bunch of articles you can find on the DSA from, I would say, if RBN is considered a radical left position, they're in that neighborhood. So yeah, so we'll be covering that article today, and then we have like then I have sort of another backup article talking about the same thing from just a different writer, but both articles are going to be good. And then just to remind you, at 4:00 Eastern today, 1 p.m. Pacific, we will have the roundtable with everybody on today. So let's try to get through this story first. I'm going to refresh. I hope I'm not buffering too much. So hopefully, because the video didn't work, so maybe you're having trouble seeing me also. But nonetheless, we will make another attempt because I'm just not the type to give up. So I'll make another attempt here and see. But anyway, I came across this article about the DSA and their like, now this is the first time I'm seeing this article. This might be an article that a lot of you will be like, oh, I've read this article, but it's the first time I'm seeing this article. So for me, it's like the feeling of you've been saying something for a while over and over, and then you finally hear somebody else say it. So what they articulate, I'll let this play. Let's see if it works. What they articulate is in this article is exactly what RBN has been shouting from the rooftops about DSA and other like DSA types like Jacobin. Let me turn the sound on it just to see if it's working. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna work, everybody. So I'll bring up the article then instead, and we could take it from there. It could be that my daughters are home gaming, or my middle daughter who games. She's sick, but of course she's not sick enough not to game. So that's what she's doing. So that could be it. But anyway, so let's go to the article. Bummed out because I did want to show that video. So this is the article we're going to be covering today. We'll probably read most of the article. Yeah, we'll probably read most of the article. It's a pretty good article. And like I said, some of you may have already read this article, but let me go ahead and do a quick chat check. Let's see if my headset is working here. I think it is. Let's do a quick chat. Okay, somebody said the stream is good. Yeah, the DSA almost always been controlled opposition. Strange that many Americans don't understand this. It is very strange, but that is the history of the DSA that is very concealed in its rhetoric and its in how his history is told here. But that is true. These are comments left before we actually got started. So let's read this one. The discourse of right-left was inherent from the French Revolution during the first National Assembly. Think of revolutionary politics without left rocks parliamentary. Absolutely, that is the goal. Absolutely. So yes, I second that. So for example, I don't use a lot of language they would use in beautician school. But if I have to talk about somebody going to beautician school and the things involved, I have to use that language. So that's sort of like a response to that. Yes, we don't want to do that. We want to move away from that. But in order to talk to people whose consciousness is not there, you have to speak in language they understand, and that might be it. So, and then, yeah, DSA has never been, I mean, Democratic Socialists. They're more like social democrats. They're not democratic socialists, actually. They're more like social democrats. I don't even know what this word is. DSA will turn you into the fee corpse if you Fred corpse if you get too radical. DSA is the youth wing of the Democratic Party. It's basically a vetting tool that, now, excuse me if I kind of squint because I do have glasses that I just haven't gotten them yet. Ordered them though. Vetting tool that Democrats use to select fresh faces to deceive workers and young people. That is a great description I would use for national DSA. There are some local DSA chapters that are doing really good community work in the community. So you can't discount that effort and those people for doing that work. But we're talking about here is the national DSA. So the national representation and national views of the DSA. And I'm going to read this again. DSA is the youth wing of the Democratic Party. It's basically a vetting tool that Democrats use to select fresh faces to deceive workers and young people. Let's start that because that is an awesome comment to me or for me. Barber E died, because I'm not going to try to pronounce that. I guess DSA died with her. I can tell you that at least some of the caucus in the DSA are all right. Bread and Roses members here, it's the Marxists are. So like I was saying, like there's great local chapters. I need to sit up more. There's great local chapters of the DSA that do great work. So yeah. Health outcomes are easily predictable. Wealth equals health. It pays to be rich. The queen lived to be 96. Most poor people, working class, will be lucky to reach 66. Life expectancy is plummeting. That is right. but like but no one wants to talk about the genesis of where all of these ailments, all of this is coming from, and how it's tied to capitalism, because the people who are running all of what we see, view, eat are the people who are benefiting. So that's not going to happen. But this is a great comment. Also, I'll star that one too. Thank you for the comment. Nice seeing AOC so happy, as she is the thumbnail. She is the thumbnail because I think the article, maybe one or both of the articles, does to mention her. And of the DSA members, she is the most recognizable face of DSA. I was gonna put the logo on there alone, and then I just felt like it needs more than just a bunch of red. So let me just change it up a little bit. So I added the most recognizable face, or a DSA member. Brother, I'm Gen Z. I believe we only have 20 more years of this earth if we're lucky. If things don't drastically change, maybe as little as 10. Yes, and if you read a lot of recent news or more current news, I'm not going to say it's the most recent news, like glaciers, sea levels rising, like, and capitalists. I mean, are they insulate? I know they may not believe, but are they even hearing it? They have no concern. Let's make some more money. What are they going to do? They're going to sell survival kits to live through the climate change. It's another market for them. Just let it happen, and it creates, climate catastrophe jackets that you put on your kids so they can walk to school. Different levels of face masks that provide different qualities of air when you're walking outside of your house. And I've heard people say this in some certain circles. Meta world is getting us ready of a life indoors because the climate catastrophe is so terrible for us to go outdoors. We're winning, right? The hideous smirk on AOC's face speaks volumes. Absolutely. I think that might be enough here. Yes, AOC, the captain of the NATO cheer squad, is actually, I think the article talks about that. I've read so many articles from this website about DSA because they have a ton. They've written about DSA and all this fake bullshit that RBN calls out. That you just want, like, and a lot of not a lot of left of our comrades are also calling it out, but it's not of the old left media sphere. But let's pause here with comments. Well, so bad. I feel like I should read a couple more. I like this time slot. I just needed to fit this in before the roundtable, or yeah, it's the old name, but now we call it the RBN Live, where there's multiple members on the same panel. So seems like all of you like that, because the last maybe one or two, maybe three, it's gotten a lot of views. Those streams, so you seem to like it. Yeah, I gave up on the video, so I gave up on that video. So something's going on, and I don't want to restart my whole computer because I'm live, so we'll just have to deal with it. Yeah, Rome tells me this exact thing, and he tells me I need to log in during his. Yes, because as Professor shoot, I don't want to say her name. Yeah, Catherine Lau. That's Professor Catherine Lau from University of Irvine, right here, not too far from where I am. As she states that's probably the biggest problem for working class citizens. The working class, the proletariat, is the PMC class. They have a outsized representational voice and what goes on the left, and they're not the majority. So we have people who's not in the working class who believe they're doing the best for the working class, and they're simply not, either by simply, naivete, or it's something, on one end it can be as simple as naivete, where it's innocent, or it can be sinister, where it's intentional. So, and it's something in between. So for me, I do make it a point to go at the PMC class because they're the ones who are doing the left messaging. They're the ones that's doing that. So we have to point out to the proletariat that these people are not your friends. So yeah, I've taken on that task here on RBN, and along with some other members too, but I'm really laser focused on that. All right, so I think I'll leave it there. Stream is good. So the stream is good. I'm just having a problem playing video, and like I said, it could be because my 4-year-old is home because she has a cold, and now I just realized that. Oh, my 12-year-old is now home. She's not feeling well. So yeah, we're all home having a party. But let me continue here. All right, so stream is everything. That's good. All right, great. All right, so let me get to this article. Let's take this banner down, and I'm going to enlarge this for my sake, just so make sure I'm not straining my eyes here. Okay, that looks clear. All right, so the headline is Democratic Socialists of America confront left-wing opposition to Biden by shifting further to the right. Now, this is something we've all, if you follow any of us on Twitter, we've been saying this all the time. Like Nick probably literally has maybe 10 tweets involving that topic every single week. That in order to shield for the Biden administration to give cover to, because it's almost like a guilt complex because they voted for them, they certainly can't say we were wrong and admit that. So they have to kind of move right because he's there. You know what I mean? They go like here, okay, we're Biden, and this is Biden, the mic, and the mic moves over there. So you either got to admit, yes, the people who told you are right and Biden is terrible, or you have to move right with Biden. NATO, military funding, supporting apartheid Israel. So let's dive into the article here. This one's written by Eric London, and this is from February of this year. There's Eric's Twitter, so if you want to follow him. I'm just gonna abbreviate, so you'll notice that I'll abbreviate things, even though it's not literally said in the article. I might abbreviate. So the DSA, I'll say the first time I'll say it the full name. The Democratic Socialists of America is preparing to move further to the right as the Biden administration and the Democratic-controlled Congress unabashedly prosecute the interests of Wall Street and American imperialism, reject even the paltriest proposals for social reform. So when you align with bad people, you get mud on yourself. It's no way not to. And the way they have, it's not like, even to me, Cornel West is not enough harsher critic of the Democratic Party and Joe Biden. He's not. But they're to the right of Cornel West. And he's barely touching the surface of criticizing the Democratic Party and Joe Biden. Since the inauguration, I'll bring it up here. Since the inauguration of Joe Biden, the DSA has presented the Democratic administration, backed by a Democratic majority in both houses of Congress, as a driving force of progressive change. Now, let me read that again without the little middle section. Since the inauguration of Joe Biden, the DSA has presented the Democratic administration as a driving force of progressive change. Did that ring true for anybody? Oops, my bad. Hang on a second here. Wait a minute. My bad, everybody. Why is it not? Oh, so yeah, I see the comments. So my bad, everybody. So I have this. I have the article up twice. I don't know why. I can't figure out why. But anyway, so I'm reading on one and scrolling through, and the other one is being displayed. So let me go to the right one and start over for those that wasn't following. That's pretty funny right there. That's pretty funny. So let's listen again to what I'm gonna say. Here we go. Okay. That's pretty funny. The Democratic Socialists, actually, let me just close this other one so I don't get this mixed up again. All right, so yeah, I got the other one closing. I won't get that mixed up again. All right, so the Democratic Socialists of America is preparing to move further to the right as the Biden administration and Democratic-controlled Congress unabashedly prosecute the interests of Wall Street and American imperialism, and reject even the paltriest proposals for social reform. The DSA has long presented a mythical version. Oops, I see what happened here. This is a completely different article that has a similar, the other one I had up that I was reading. It had a similar title. But I am going to still read that other one. But anyway, so this article is completely different. So the DSA has had a long has long presented a mythical version of the Democratic Party, suggesting that it would open up avenues for social reform once in party. Wasn't that what we were promised? Wasn't that what we were promised? DSA is going to get in there, the Justice Democrats, because that's who DSA is. These are all sort of overlapping groups. Jacobin is sort of their magazine. They tie themselves to DSA. You'll hear them in magazines always referring to the DSA when they're talking about, or a DSA member when they're quoting somebody as a quote from a leftist, or getting an organization. They use that a lot. So Jacobin readers, DSA, there is a lot of overlapping with those groups. Since the inauguration of Joe Biden, the DSA has presented the Democratic administration, backed by a Democratic majority in both houses of Congress, as a driving force of progressive social change. Isn't that what we have been sold on? Isn't that what Kyle Kalinske said in his explain video to the Justice Democrats? This is the best way forward. Our best way for social changes through the Democratic Party. Isn't that what we've all been sold on and now pretty much fight for, even though you have tons of freaking evidence to the contrary? So let's continue. In its first quarterly statement published after the November 2020 election and Biden's inauguration in January 2021, the DSA's Socialist Forum editorial committee wrote, this is them a quote, "It seems like Democrats have learned some important lessons from the Obama administration. What's more, there is now, for the first time in many years, a meaningful left. It literally made my mouth dry. Oh. What's more, there is now, for the first time in many years, a meaningful left in this country that will continue to push for the biggest and boldest policies possible to combat the pandemic, social inequality, racial injustice, and climate change. Now, let me just point out how all of this is great and I'm on board, but there's one word that makes this completely useless. And most of you probably already know, and that's this word right here, possible. Makes it completely useless. So let's read. Because when you read this part, you're thinking like biggest and boldest policies. What are they talking? Oh, possible. Oh, possible. Why is the need to add possible in there? That's is a completely unneeded word. So let me read it without it. A meaningful left in this country that will continue to push for the biggest and boldest policies to combat the pandemic. You see how they don't want to be held to that standard, the biggest and boldest policies? Instead, they're held to the standard of the biggest and boldest policies possible. So all of this great talk, they self-water it down with this word right there. So if you are a person that's not immersed in politics like RBN and or even myself, CJ, where I literally, when I read, I'm analyzing the use of each word, not just reading it, but I'm trying to understand what is the use of the word in this place. And this is the word that makes the whole difference. So let's continue. But let me get back to the point. So an average person who is brand new is like, yeah, I'm tired of this freaking country. This is terrible. I haven't been in politics, but I want to get in politics and I want to be the left. Everybody, every echo chamber that's not independent politics or independent media is saying the DSA is the left. So said person is going to go to the DSA and say, hey, let's go do some of these things you're saying, the biggest and the boldest policies. Let's go do it. And that's how they're captured. It's terrible. So let's continue, and then I'll get to some comments because I know you have comments on the DSA. Just don't have the greatest reputation. Even Catherine Liu, when she was here, she said sometimes she gets in hot water because she goes too far, and then they start to criticize her. So we are at 141 likes. Thank you for that. Can we like this stream? We have 252 people. Could we maybe get it to 200? 200 people, 200 likes. I'm sorry. That's about 60 more likes. If we can get 60 more likes to get to 200, that would be great. And that'll bring in some more people. Maybe we can get some DSA backers. I'm sure some of them may be here just silently watching. But, speak up. If you are a DSA member and you believe in the politics of Jacobin, you believe in the politics of the national DSA. So if you're a local DSA member, I understand you might be doing great work, but we want to can you speak to what the national DSA is doing? So let's continue with the article, and then I'll read some of your comments. The DSA's promise of a meaningful left through the Democratic Party has proven to be a disaster for the working class. I think I'm going to have to read this sentence 3 times right here. The DSA promise of a meaningful left through the Democratic Party has proven to be a disaster for the working class. Disaster for the working class. Disaster for the working class. This is why I keep pointing out David Sirota. They're part of the PMC. David Sirota is part of the professional managerial class, and it's DSA overlap. Lots of DSA overlap. Also, Marianne Williamson. They're beloved by the DSA. DSA would back Marianne Williamson as a president in a heartbeat. And it feels like RBN is the backstop saying, what the fuck are y'all talking about? Biden has brought the world closer to prospects of nuclear war than any time since the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. 500,000 more Americans have died of COVID in the years since Biden took office. And now the Biden administration and Democratic governors are ending. Now, this is old. So this is back when they were ending the restrictions on the pandemic. As more than 200 people die every day. So the reality explodes. The DSA's claim that its influence has encouraged the 200-year-old party of imperialist reaction to transform itself into a left-wing party of social. Yeah, this is the sale. This is the sale. 200-year-old imperialist party is going to transform into a left-wing party of progress. Is that believable? Is it really believable? It's not even believable, in my opinion, to even think that's the case. And if you say, because some of them will say, well, that's not, we don't think, electoral is just to get some things done. So what about the people who are not affected by the some things done? You see how they'll never be taken care of if we do the way you want to do it, electoral, because electoral never reaches them. It's a world they don't want to see. Out of sight, out of mind, right? In a series of recent statements, the Democratic operatives who led the DSA have begun to acknowledge the growth of left-wing opposition to DSA-backed politicians like AOC. Let me read that again because I might have stumbled in the words. In a series of recent statements, the Democratic operatives who lead the DSA have begun to acknowledge the growth of left-wing opposition to DSA-backed politicians like AOC and Jamal Bowman, who are increasingly seen as conventional capitalist politicians and apologists for Biden and Pelosi. Now, you see what I mean? Why I said, I love the wording of this website. Now, this is not a new website. A lot of us have been reading it, but I started rereading it again because I had stopped reading it for a while. For whatever reason, I started reading some other stuff. But the language is spot on here. DSA have begun to acknowledge the growth of left-wing opposition to DSA-backed politicians like AOC and Jabal Bowman, who are increasingly seen as conventional capitalist politicians and apologists for Biden and Pelosi. That is spot on. And this was what is that? 7 months ago? We're in September. Yeah. So 7 months ago, who are increasingly, so 7 months has passed. And I think she's reached the finish line. She appeared on GQ. Who else appears on GQ but the people, the celebrities who have arrived? Capitalist politician and apologist for Biden, Biden and Pelosi. Mama Bear. Biden is doing a great job. So let's go to comments. I'm going to pause here and go to comments. Like I said, some of you may read this article before. This is a great article. I'm loving the language because it's using the language that I feel RBN uses to discuss this. And we're at 195 likes. Thank you. The goal was 200 and we're 5 away. So thank you, everybody watching. Now let's check out some of your comments here. All right, so let's go back a little bit just to get coverage of everything. So yeah, progressives are laughable. So we are taxed on money that is already taxed. Oh, maybe that's a discussion happening in the comments. Yeah. Oh yeah, this is the discussion here. That's happening about that. So they had to quit the DSA after listening to you once, CJ. Hopefully. I turn in, immediately hit the like button. Awesome. Death by Vacant Platitudes. That could be the name of a movie about the DSA. Or at least DSA politicians. National politicians. Because I don't know how good this new person, Christine out of New York, she's like elected to the state. She says she's a socialist, but she's absolutely DSA. And what did somebody say in the earlier comment? DSA is the breeding ground for just young Democrats. And you know what? Catherine Liu said the same thing. I forgot. I just remembered that. She said, I wonder, do I have I don't think I have that clipped. Yeah, I don't think I have that clip, but I will bring up one of her clips to show you. But yeah, let's read a little more of your comments first, actually, and then I'm getting ahead of myself here. Oh yeah, I'm sure we've passed it by now because we're 5 away. Only if it's possible, CJ. Only if it's possible. It's always possible. It's always possible. Okay, so you're catching up. Awesome. What's up, comrades? Some of that are just showing up. All right, so let's check a little. You don't trust Catherine Liu. Okay. Yes, Christine Gonzalez. I apologize to Christine if I forgot your name. Forgot your last name, but yes, she. We'll see how she does. Maybe she has a little more leeway to be more like a socialist at the local level. I have no clue, but we'll find out, right? Let's actually go back to the article. Where did I leave off DSA? Okay, so right around here. Aware that this opposition reflects broader working class discontent, the DSA concludes it must work even harder to prevent a mythical version of the Democratic Party in order to better channel social discontent behind it. Listen to that. Aware of this opposition aware that this opposition reflects broader working class discontentment. Now, they're saying DSA is aware that this opposition reflects a broader working class discontentment. I'm adding that word. The DSA concludes that it must work even harder to present a mythical version of the Democratic Party in order to better channel social discontent. So they must even work harder to shout, to say that the Democrats are doing a good job, like with the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, the climate provisions in that Inflation Reduction Act, and what they're saying about it. All these DSA aligned group, like the Sunrise Movement. All these overlapping minor league Democratic breeding ground groups. Just amazing. Let's continue. To bridge the growing chasm between the DSA myth and the Democratic reality, the DSA leadership is maneuvering to the right, calling for an end to any political principle that might marginalize the DSA from the Democratic Party establishment. If the DSA does not move to the right, where the Democratic Party is, they'll be marginalized. They're at the kids' table right now at the barbecue, at the backyard family barbecue. They're already sitting at the kids' seat, but they're going to be asked to leave, and that's what they're afraid of. Prominent DSA figures are praising even conservative Democrats like Chuck Schumer and New York Governor Kathy Hochul. DSA-linked politicians are abandoning slogans that were associated with the mass demonstrations against the Trump administration, including abolish ICE and defund the police. Concerns over the influence of left-wing politics. That's the next subline here, or subheadline. So let's continue. There is a growing recognition by the DSA leadership that its defense of the Democratic Party is so detached from reality that it's provoking serious opposition from the left. This is 7 months ago. And what you saw, Forced to Vote, was a physical, visual version of what this is. Because the working class was forced to vote. And we had a few PMCs that crossed over with the working class. But the reason it didn't go down is because the DSA was like, oh, no. The professional managerial class. The chasm growing between the working class, left, and the DSA, which is the professional managerial class. A February 14th Jacobin article. Wow. The reason I say this is because now when I read this article, I've read so many articles. Maybe I did read this already because I know I've read several completed articles. I don't know why I thought this was in a different article. But anyway, I'm glad that it's here because Rome and I covered this particular article. There is a stream on this particular article, and it's called The End of the AOC Honeymoon. So you can search it on RBN. But I think it was me and Rome, or Rome and I should say. So a February 14th Jacobin article by Natalie Shore, The End of AOC Honeymoon, notes the enthusiasm of the Sanders presidential campaign has largely dissolved and given way to frustration with the Democratic Party's progressive elements. 2 years later, the outlook for this new left is still not clear. Shore writes, thanks to the limits of human life span, there won't be a Bernie 2024, and large parts of the post-Bernie vacuum are losing faith in his young successors. 32-year-old Ocasio-Cortez and the progressive members of Congress surrounding her. So I read it kind of slow, but losing faith in the young successors to Bernie. That was written in this article. Now, we covered this. The angle how I covered this article was that from the title, I thought this was saying how it's sort of like what that last little section said. But largely the article was pointing it out that yes, there's discontentment, but then it was basically saying we shouldn't have that. We need to back them anyway. And then I was like, what the fuck is this? And then I found out because somebody in the comments or somewhere, maybe it was in the stream, said, oh, Natalie Shore is DSA. And I said, oh, in the stream, if you watch the stream, I said, oh, that explains this whole entire article now. So let's continue. These concerns over large parts of the post-Bernie vacuum losing faith in the DSA political leaders are at the heart of the DSA's rise to power, I guess. The DSA exists to trap social opposition and to channel it back into the Democratic Party. Nick says this explicitly all the time. This is probably why liberals hate him. The DSA exists to trap social opposition and to channel it back into the Democratic Party. There it is in black and white. It's no longer just the black radicals on RBN saying it. Not that it was anyway. But you know that RBN channel, the ones that they just kind of don't give respect. Oh yeah, yes, RBN. They haven't gone to schools. They don't have these degrees to really know politics. Here's an article for you. The professional managerial class don't take working class people for their word. They need to see shit in black and white. So here it is. The DSA exists to trap social opposition and to channel it back into the Democratic Party. Sure, references growing opposition to AOC, who left-wing critics say had been tamed and co-opted by the Democratic Party. Sure also refers to left-wing dissent about the squad's political project when DSA member and New York Congressman Jamal Bowman sparked ire for voting to fund Israel's Iron Dome. Sure admits that the 100+ DSA members serving in state and local offices across the country, and even the socialists with specific blocks on city councils in urban cities like centers like Chicago and New York, sometimes take positions that are widely at odds with those that of their organization. But Sure defends AOC and Bowman and argue there is no principle worth defending if it alienates the Democratic Party establishment. Let me say this shit again. This is ridiculous. Then I'll go to comments here. Sure defends AOC and Jamal Bowman and argues that argues that there is no principle. There is no policy, she's saying. There's no stance. So your anti-war stance, your anti-imperialist stance, your anti-capitalist stance as a socialist, there's no principle worth defending if it alienates the Democratic Party establishment. Oh God. DSA is terrible. The working class. I don't y'all the PMC, y'all can do all of this shit. We need to take the grips of any other remaining working class people who are still listening to these people. That's the point of attack for me in certain instances. So we're at 254 likes, 300 viewers. Can we move that 25 more to 275? Can we get to 275? And that might push us to maybe another 10 or 15 more people that will join us for a conversation in the chat. But let's throw some comments up here. Yes, she was trying to double speak. And that is it's a calming tactic. It's a tactic of the ruling class to pretend to care. It's acknowledge pain. Listen, I was in sales for 15 years or more. Lots of different sales, but mainly cellular sales. I work for all the companies, AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, is another one. But anyway, so yes. But train people in sales. This is you acknowledge their pain. Somebody comes in to the store, hey, this freaking service sucks. You acknowledge, yeah, that can be frustrating. You ever call a utility and you complain? They go, yes, I can understand how that's been frustrating. We've all been trained to do this. So you don't attack them when they present you a substandard answer. Because now you're saying, oh, this person's on my side. They understand. They feel my pain. So what they're presenting to me as a solution is what they can do. It is a tactic used in sales. That is the point that I'm making. But anyway, support labor unions, poor unions, tenant unions. Absolutely. There is no principle worth defending if it alienates the Democratic Party establishments. Are we kidding me? That's a dead end. Abso-freaking-lutely. Yeah, Irie. Change comes from the bottom, not from political parties. That is absolutely true. Need more communists to run at local levels, build awareness. That would be great. That is something I would also suggest to do. The left-wing progressive movement that Bernie Sanders started and abandoned is so fractured and split that I am beginning to lose my optimism. Wow, well, you're doing a lot better than me because my optimism in that has long left me. My optimism in that Bernie movement has long left. So, but let's continue. And I'll start from here with this important sentence here. But Shore defends AOC and Bowman and argues that there is no principle worth defending if it alienates the Democratic establishment. Imperfect progressives may make insurgent progressive politics more popular within the Democratic Party. Insurgent progressive politics more popular within the Democratic Party, Shore writes, and attacks left-wing critics. This angry fallout and the media spectacle that accompanies it risks turning progressives like Bowman away from the DSA and prevents the DSA from working in coalition with more and more groups. This is an appeal for a reconciliation with a broader, more explicitly right-wing segment of the Democratic Party. This is an appeal for reconciliation with a broader, more explicitly right-wing segment of the Democratic Party. Very important point. Referencing Bowman's Iron Dome vote, Shore cites DSA Vice President and former DNC official David Duhalde, maybe that's how you say it, as advocating for the need for flexibility when it comes for public office holders. Shore quotes Duhalde as saying, "For people like me," this is the quote, "for people like me, this is about winning, about building power with those elected to advance public policy and coalition work to raise the profile of DSA, not to act as a tribute for the organization. In other words, the DSA must abandon opposition that threaten to disrupt its coalition work with the Democratic Party." And therein lies why they don't criticize the Democratic Party. Why AOC, none of them will criticize any of the things that the Biden administration are doing. Lightly criticize, barely say something. It's all they will do. Didn't realize how interesting this article would be to reread on in front of everybody, but I'm digging it. So we're going to continue. It's almost to its end, or not too far if I read faster. But we're probably not going to get to all of it because I don't want to be on. I do want to give a break for in between for our next live stream, which is RBN Live. We're going to be covering. How about I do that? So let's give a break in this topic just so I can cover one thing. We're at 284 likes. Thank you so much. The target was 275. Onward to 300. But let me just take a short breather here to show you one item here. This is what we're going to be covering at 4 p.m. Eastern. I'll put the graphic on the screen. 4 p.m. Eastern, this is what we're covering. Corporate sounding, independent, with quotation marks, media. Breaking points, war propaganda. So just more war propaganda, more just terrible news. Nick and I were talking behind the scenes on the stream, and he was like, man, he's like, and Jackson too. Jackson Hinkle was, I think this was, oh no, maybe it was on stream. He was like, man, the more and more, I couldn't tell the difference between Breaking Point segment and CNN and MSNBC. He's like, you could put them side by side and it would be the same. So we're going to be covering that. That's the lead story, or the lead topic, I should say. And then we're covering some other things. The stories we missed yesterday of putting in, we're going to put them in today. I think one of them was police chief gets caught up or arrested in a sex trafficking sting. And then Steph Curry calls out Donald Trump as a big threat. So those are a couple of the stories. And then something else came out. TYT did something else today. So we're probably going to add that story to RBN Live at 4 p.m. today. So make sure you join us. So let me continue with this article. And then I'm going to cut to a different article that just kind of backs up the point of the title, which is DSA or Democratic Socialists of America confront left-wing opposition to Biden by shifting further to the right. So we're going to examine more how they've shifted to the right with another article. But before that, let me finish reading a little more of this article we're on. In a January 11th article by Lisa Featherstone titled "New York Democratic Socialists Are Playing the Long Game," Jacobin acknowledged left-wing frustrations over the inability of DSA members of Congress to accomplish anything, but the author argued that prospects for pressuring the Democrats are much more better on the state and local level. According to Featherstone, the New York Democratic Party state machine is leading the march to socialism. Now, yeah, I guess I can read this. Democrats in Albany work with the socialists on issues of common ground, co-sponsoring bills, and even joining protests together. Both New York Senators Christian Gillibrand and Chuck Schumer who are centrist Democrats, endorsed DSA-backed Buffalo mayor candidate India Walton after she won her primary. Schumer has embraced some of the socialist top priorities, even showing up for the tax worker protest. New York State Senator Julia Salazar explained, Senator Schumer is a shrewd politician who has his ear to the ground and sees that politics are changing and that communities are electing Democratic socialists because they are the policies they support. Featherstone praises right-wing Democratic Governor Kathy Hochul as being somewhat responsive to socialist demands. Featherstone then claims the DSA has given a substantial section of the Democratic Party the strength to proclaim that they are longtime socialists. Others are progressive politicians who might not have admitted their socialist sympathies and now feel emboldened to do so more openly. That's progress, I guess. In reality, Comrade Holcomb is an unelected arch reactionary who took over control of the state after former governor Andrew Cuomo was ousted in a sex scandal and is the party establishment pick for the 2022 gubernatorial election. Holcomb has recently ended the state mask mandate, implemented a ban on homeless people resting in subways during cold winter, declared that no one in administration supports defunding the police, won the enthusiastic endorsement of Hillary Clinton, and has raised $21 million in campaign funding, largely from Wall Street real estate speculators, hospitals and nursing homes, hotel chains, and gambling companies. Notably, Jacobin's article praises Holcomb's support for increasing police budgets, with Featherstone writing this. Listen to this. This is DSA. There is no one working class view on policing. But so far, the defund the police message could complicate New York City's DSA's effort to build a mass electoral base, calling it a risky message that can seem out of touch with well-founded fears of crime. Such statements make clear the DSA is not pressing the Democrats to move to the left, but that the DSA is voluntarily moving further to the right to accommodate Democratic establishment. And that is just fucking terrible. Let's go to a few of your comments before I move to the next one. But yes, is that two different people putting up that their DSA front group ? American Internationalists. Law of opposite names. The anti-socialists, the DSA are social fascists. That would be an interesting discussion to have. Blue MAGA, absolutely. India, warmongering is the best warmongering. So let's continue. Let's continue with. Let me bring up my other article because I'm going to be bringing the stream to an end in about 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes. So as to give about 30 minutes as a break before we start our roundtable stream. So let's talk about another way the DSA has moved to the right. in order to give cover to the Democratic Party. They're moving to the right. So let me bring up this other article here. I'll just put it in the same window frame here. Now, this article, The Democratic Socialists of America and the Invention of the Pro-Imperialist Ukrainian Resistance. And this is written by the same person, Eric London. And this one is in June, so a couple of months ago. The Democratic Socialists of America and the Invention of the Pro-Imperialist Ukraine Resistance. So let's read this part here. And oops, did not mean to do that. Yes, okay, I guess I can redo that. This is the one. So let me actually do a quick like check before I start this last section of this segment, just to see where we're at. So we are at 309. Thank you for that. So we're at 309. If we could push to 325, we do have a lot new people who aren't watching earlier watching now. And thank you for joining us. So you know London's work. Okay, so let's read this new article here. On June 3rd, let me make sure it's set up right. Yeah. All right, so let me close this one. I want to have the mistake again. All right, so have the right article up. Let's continue. On June 3rd, Tempest published an article entitled Solidarity with the Ukraine Resistance by Ashley Smith, a prominent member of the Democratic Socialists of America and former leader of the now defunct International Socialist Organization. The article calls for arming Ukraine with heavy NATO weapons and is a tyrant against all who question the propaganda of U.S. imperialism. It justifies U.S. escalation by claiming the Ukrainian people are engaged in a democratic struggle for self-determination against Russian imperialism. Smith's article is an attempt to preempt opposition within the groups of the Democratic Socialists of America to prolong U.S. NATO-led wars, which has provoked widespread shortages and basic necessities all over the world and risk plunging the globe into a nuclear nightmare. As Smith says in a brief preface, the article aims to review the ongoing left debate about the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the continued need to defend Ukraine resistance as the starting point for rebuilding international solidarity from below. That sounds like bullshit. But these are the Merriam-Williamson's groups. And our critique of Marianne-Williamson is based on policy. She's terrible on foreign policy, in particular when it comes to the war machine. So now we have a lane of the leftist imperialist, the NATO squad. It's okay to be NATO and socialist. You can do both. Get you somebody who can do both, NATO and socialism. Just absurd. Just absurd. So let's continue where I left off, which is here. In his article, Smith declares that the international left now more than ever must organize solidarity with the Ukraine resistance and defend its right to secure arms. Smith argues that the Ukrainian military has waged a national popular struggle for self-determination, a fundamentally democratic aim and one that deserves the full support of the international left. There can be no talk of NATO expansion, which Smith claims is merely Putin's alibi, because the states of Eastern Europe only joined NATO out of the long-term fear their imperialist overlord, Russia. The crux of Smith's argument is that the war is one of popular working class resistance to Russia. In this vein, Smith attacks fake anti-imperialists who oppose arming the so-called Ukrainian resistance and thereby betray Ukraine. This is just eye-opening for some. These are not serious theoretical arguments. They are absurdities. Smith makes no attempt to explain how Ukraine's attempt to join NATO, a military network run by the world's largest imperialist powers, constitute a step towards self-determination. Nor can he explain why pro-Russian separatists in Luhansk and Donbass cannot assert the same right to leave Ukraine. He praises the Ukrainian left for fighting the government's oligarchic capitalism, but he cannot explain how it is that this same government is leading a struggle against imperialism. The subject of Ukrainian regime glorification of Stepan Bandera, the leader of the organization of the OUN, I'll just say, which participated in mass extermination of Jews during the World War III, is all but ignored. This is the shifting. I'm pulling away from the article. This is me speaking. This is the shifting of to the right by DSA. Like, this is completely absurd, this position that has been taken. As if there's a debate on the left. There isn't a debate on the left about the war machine. There is none. There's people who aren't left who have taken it upon themselves to use the label who are imperialists, i.e. Marianne Williamson. So the PM, you see how the professional managerial class, without regard of the working class, is putting up somebody like Marianne Williamson, who's terrible on foreign policy. You can't have solidarity with the working class and not be good on foreign policy. And here's why. Because any sort of working class movement has to be international, because if you just clean up one section of the world, all the imperialists are going to do is just go to all the other countries that aren't cleaned up. So you have to have an international perspective. You have to be good on foreign policy. But the professional managerial class doesn't care. As long as she's with healthcare for all and $15 minimum wage, she's Malcolm X to them. She's that far left. So I think I went on a long enough rant. Let me see. Second Thoughts is the DSA. He says join. Second Thought is the DSA. He says join. Oh, yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. I had to read it in my mind. So you're talking about the guy or the person who has a channel called Second Thoughts. NATO is the British Empire in disguise. Crystal Kalinsky Balls is pushing. We're going to be covering Breaking Points in Crystal Ball later today. So make sure you check that out for the roundtable. So yeah. So let me read it. Let me close out this article, and we're going to be closing out the stream in about 10 minutes, 12 minutes. So that gives us about 30 minutes before the next stream starts at 4 p.m. Let me see. I got a reminder for something to do. Got to check that out. All right. So let's read a little more. Smith's targets are not those who are openly defend Russia, but rather parties and individuals that might criticize Russia but blame the US and NATO for the conflict. Let me read that again. Smith's targets are not those who openly defend Russia. So, not those that are just saying, Russia, I want Russia to win, but rather the target is parties and individuals that might criticize Russia and say Russia's doing bad, but at the same time say, but they blame US and NATO for the conflict and thereby justify Russia's war. Even worse, Smith writes they back actions like strikes by workers to block arms shipments to Ukraine. He attacks those who condemns Russia's invasion, but also opposes Ukraine's military resistance as well as US and NATO arms shipment in support of it. Smith often uses this type of provocative language to justify US intervention. In 2016, for example, he advocated US imperialist support for. Now, when we say Smith, keep in mind this is DSA. So Smith often uses this type of provocative language to justify U.S. intervention. In 2016, for example, he advocated U.S. imperialist support for the so-called democratic opposition in Syria by writing, this is Smith's now, the Syrian revolution has tested the left internationally, but posing posing a blunt question. Which side are you on? Do you support the popular struggle against dictatorship and for democracy? With are you with Bashar al-Assad brutal regime? Brutal regime. His imperial backer Russia, his regional ally Iran, and Iran's proxy like Hezbollah and Lebanon. Like I mean, I just can't believe this is a DSA guy. The more that I'm reading about this, but this is just to illustrate the point that was made in the initial article that DSA is going after the left, is confronting the left from the right, and they're moving further right in order to more align with the Democrats, in order to not be sort of outcast by the Democratic Party. They're at the kids' table, and they don't want to be put out of the entire event, basically. So that's where I think I'm going to. Let me just kind of see if there's any other part of this article that would be good to read. That might be where I'm going to leave it. Yeah, I think I'm going to leave it there. Yeah. All right. So let me tell you this. Please like this stream. And hang on a second here. I wonder if that video. Let's go back to the video and see if that video will work. You know what? Let's see if a different video will work. That might be a better way to do this. So if you would like to get, now I'm going to go to your comments, but let me say this first. If you would like to join our Substack to get notifications, like those who are on our Substack got notifications of this current stream, and they got notifications of the stream that's coming up at 4 p.m. Eastern. So if you want to be a part of that group, you can join our Substack here. And we will, where's it at? Oh, and we will, and you will get notifications of when we do live streaming. Sometimes I send out like if they stream and you didn't get it live, but it's just a clip. Sometimes we will send out notifications of that also, so they're not always live, but 90% of them are live for live streams. All right. Let's play this. I'm checking to see if all videos are not playing on my. Yeah, it looks like all videos are not playing, so I won't be able to do a closeout video. So also like this stream. The way we've been able, and we're approaching 22,000. We're approaching 22,000 subscribers, but the only way we've been able to do that is because of your support. You're liking these videos, you're sharing these videos. So thank you for all your support. We're at 353 likes. If we could push to maybe 25 more or 22 more and get to 375 before the stream ends, greatly appreciated. This is You Left Shit Out. And then there's a couple of more announcements I'm going to cover here. Activist Summit is coming up October 22nd and 23rd. That's a Saturday and Sunday, October 22nd and 23rd. If you are an activist of any kind, that could be local activists in your area, you protest the police, you're about rent control, you grow community gardens, you do climate action, any sort of activism that you do, police brutality, trans rights, LGBTQ rights. Email us if you would like to be part of our activist summit, and or if you're part of a group that does activism also in any of those areas. Email us, in the subject line put activist summit, and we will respond. Where I'm looking for the next item. Also, Rome is still looking for a producer. He's looking to collect about 7 or 8 people and then kind of decide from there. I think we got 6. So if you're interested, email us, and in the subject line put Rome's producer. Okay. I'm not gonna have a outro video for you today because for whatever reason, I think I got to restart my computer because it's not, all the videos are not playing. So I'm not going to be playing a video today. So it's kind of different. So join us in about 30 minutes. I'm making sure I'm not leaving out anything. Join us in about 30 minutes for our next stream where we're going to be covering the corporate sounding independent media of Breaking Points, and specifically their war coverage. So if you want, check out this article and many other articles on the World Socialist website. This is the article, the last article I was reading from, if you were wondering if you wanted to check it out. And this is where I'm going to leave you. Thank you for joining me for this special quick stream of about not quite 90 minutes, but close to 90 minutes. Stay tuned or take a break and come back in about 40 minutes or so. I'm sorry, in about 30 minutes or so for RBN Live with the rest of the crew. I'm going to be signing off. This is CJ signing off for You Left Shit Out. Thank you for joining me today. I'm CJ.